Perfect. So as I mentioned, I'm the project manager on Cork Nature Network's Wildwalks Wild Spaces project. So really, I think what I want to start with is saying, like, what is an urban green space? It has a lot of definitions. It has a lot of different meanings to people. And I think that's really important to, what is an urban green space to you? I saw a really nice description by Green Spaces Scotland, where they said they're the green lungs of our towns and cities. And that's exactly what they are. They give life to cities. They're technically defined as open green spaces in urban areas that have a high, like basically a high percentage of vegetation, open grassland, trees, flowers, just nature in general. So as I said, yeah, higher than average biodiversity in these sites. So that's an urban green space. And then when you think about it, what we're saying is we're looking for these wild spaces. And if you actually look up the definition of wild spaces, because I did the other day, wild space actually refers to space, like space. So really what we're talking about here is we're talking about areas in the city that have high biodiversity, that have minimum management where possible, which obviously in an urban area is not very easy to find in general in Ireland. Like, there's not really wild spaces left. So we're looking for places where there's minimal management. And I'll go into more description about the other elements that we needed to bring in. So that's just to give an overview of what an urban green space and what a wild space is to us. So what are the benefits to these urban green spaces? Well, first of all, for human health and well-being, there's actually a lot of studies. I should have cited it, but there's a very interesting study about the Netherlands, and it's about a hospital that is a hospital that overlooks a grassland, basically, and they actually found that they had a higher percentage of people recovering from heart issues, and I think it was linked to being able to actually see nature, which is just very interesting. But there's other things that come into that as well, like pollution, noise pollution, light pollution. If you go to the Glen and you're in the center of Glen, although there's a main road going past it on either side and there's housing estates around as well, you wouldn't know you're in a city. It's so quiet, and that's because trees and plants and shrubs, they just take in the sound and they block it. So they're really important that way as well. I'm sure we can all appreciate it because of lockdown. I'm sure we were all going out for our walks in our 5Ks, probably discovering all sorts of wild spaces. And importantly as well, they provide habitat for plants and animals. In urban spaces, these green spaces aren't always, I suppose, I would say, aesthetically pleasing in the traditional sense, but they can provide a lot of resources for plants and animals, some that actually aren't really found outside of urban areas. So they're really important that way. Sometimes they can be a niche space. They're also great for outdoor educational spaces, particularly for schools or any kind of groups like that. You can really bring people outside and actually get them engaging with nature. And I think it's just a great way to really learn. Instead of them being in a classroom, going out, really seeing what's out there, learning about your local biodiversity is just really important. And I think it really sends the message home about how important conservation and nature is. And obviously, importantly, they're a recreational space. For example, in our project, really our aim, as I'll say in a minute, is to get people out and to engage with nature. And we're doing that through looking at what trails and what walkways are available in Cork City. But there's actually a great talk by Cork Chamber called Greening Our City. I think there's actually a few of them, but they go into way more detail about, everything from the benefits to show examples in other countries and how we could do it in Ireland. They're just fantastic talks, and they're all available on YouTube as well if you're interested. So Wildwalks, what is the aim of the project? So as I said, it's to encourage the public to engage with the natural environment and learn more about their surrounding nature. So how are we doing this? Well, first of all, we were composed of a group of 6 volunteers. all young ecologists. So it was great again to get experience to go out and survey. So what we did is we looked at, well, basically we did a desk study looking for what green sites were in Cork City. And we also opened this up to the public and asked people to get involved and get onto us and tell us what sites they know of in their local area that they would be interested in us covering as well. And we actually did get some feedback, particularly for the Douglas area, which was really helpful and really useful, and we're very grateful for that. So after we did these online site searches, obviously we needed to go out to the actual sites, because there's a lot of different elements that make it that make it safe or make it accessible to people. So we then gone out and we've done survey sites in different areas, creating species lists, which we will also provide to Biodiversity Ireland. Now, all this information compiled, what we want to do is make a free digital walking map that will be available on Cork Nature Network's website. And this will show the various wild sites throughout Cork City and the admin suburb areas, really. And what this map will entail is we're envisioning, because we're currently in that phase of the project now, really we're envisioning a beautiful map that has the trails, and they have the different sites so that you know where in Cork City these wild sites are. And we're also hoping to create some interpretive signs to put in some of the parks and some of the wild sites. These really are just to showcase what species are found in that area and why these particular sites are so important for biodiversity and conservation. Thankfully, there's actually a lot of sites already have really great signs. So it's just basically about providing education and awareness really in these areas, and we'll link it to the map as well so that they'll both be linked together. So as I've kind of already mentioned a few times, is that there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to wild spaces. It's not just a patch of grass or woodland that were included, although there's a lot, or I suppose a lot, maybe exaggeration. There are plenty of really good sites around Cork City and the suburb area. But what we need to consider is elements about humans and wildlife. So on the human side, you have to think about accessibility. So who owns these sites? Are they open to the public? Are they privately owned? Does it cost to go into the sites? Are they free? Can you access them at any point? And how can you get to these sites? What transport's available, or is there parking there? For example, I like to think that I am the demographic for this project, because I live in Cork City and I do not drive. So when I'm looking at these sites, I'm thinking, how can I get out there? Is it easy for me to get out there? Because I can't drive to locations. There could be lovely ones, but if you can't get there, if you can't park, if you're going with your family, and you need to have the accessibility there. And there are also safety concerns as well. We can't send the public out to a site that isn't safe. So, for example, sites where there's very rough terrain, which again leads into accessibility, because we want everyone to be able to go out to these sites as well. We don't want to, make it impossible for people to be able to walk on trails if they're treacherous or if they're in any way dangerous. So that has to be taken in consideration as well. I feel like a lot of the sites that are included actually have a lovely, a lovely variety of paths that you could take. So for example, Ballincollig Regional Park, they have a fantastic paved walkway that loops all the way around the park. And they have a fantastic woodland kind of in the center, I would say. And in there, then you have your woodland trails. So if you wanted to, you could very easily walk along the tarmacs, the very flat, very wide path. If you want to get a little bit more, I suppose, adventurous, then you can go through those paths, and then you can even go further into very kind of a bit wilder, I suppose we should say, trails. And it's the same with the Glen as well. They do have a lovely path that loops around, but then you can go up onto the hills, as I said, above the birds. And that's just a bit wilder as well. It really allows you to immerse yourself at different levels. And again, another thing will be light fixtures as well. A big thing just about safety. So we have the human side, and then we have the biodiversity side, our plants and animals. You really need to consider what the project might, what effects the project might have for biodiversity in these areas. For example, if we're asking people to go out to these sites to engage with nature, naturally there's going to be more footfall in these areas, which can lead to human disturbance. This is from noise pollution, actual like pollution, just from the presence of people that can affect animals, and obviously plants, trampling plants. As well, dogs. I know a lot of people like to bring their dogs out to parks or out to, when they're going out for their walks or their hikes. And this can be, this kind of a big effect. For example, in a lot of the national parks, they have signs, keep your dog on a leash or don't bring your dog. Because a lot of national parks, they manage their grassland and their habitats with sheep or with goats. So then a lot of people bring their dogs off leash, and then the animals get chased. So that's actually just an element that needs to be considered. Obviously, in Cork City, it's on a smaller scale. And then also you have to consider what are the endangered or maybe rare species in these areas, and how can you protect them. For example, down in Killarney National Park, they have I want to say it's the Kerry fern, but I think that's very wrong. But I remember from my days in school, they were saying there's a fern there and they don't say where the location is. They don't publicize it because it's basically endemic to that area, somewhere in the Mediterranean, I think. But just very interesting. These are all the elements you'd consider. Like if we did come across something that was really rare, would we include that site going forward? So these are just all aspects that come in mind when you're thinking of a wild space. So then in the end, you end up coming up with, I suppose, a smaller list of possible places. And I see now, I can't remember, I didn't include it, but some of the ones, so we have Curheen Walk, you have the Riverlea Walk. In Glanmire, there's a small trail in Hazelwood, just between two estates. That's great for pollinators, particularly butterflies. It looks somewhat disused in the sense that I suppose most people would think, oh, this is just like no one's taking care of it, but it's full of bramble, thistle, nettles, everything for butterflies. I should have made a list and had it beside me, but obviously once out in Douglas, you have the Ballybrack Wood, or the Mangala, as most people know it there. Tremor Valley Park, another really big one, a lot of work going on there at the moment. Just a lot of different sites around that will be included on the map, but not all of them will be getting signs. So what I want to do was talk about one of the sites in particular, and this is John O'Callaghan's Park in Glanmire. Now, I actually chose this site because I'm from Knockgraha originally, so I would have come here a lot when I was younger. If you can see the map over, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving, but if you can, there is a small playground there. So I used to come here a lot, and I used to actually practice my three-legged race with my friend in this clearing here in the woodland. So I was like, oh, I get the opportunity to go out and survey this site and, see what it's really about. Because in my youth, obviously, I probably wasn't really noticing what nature was around me. And it is a fantastic site. It is full of different habitats and just a wealth of biodiversity. And if you can see from this map, now we've only included the park because if you can see that there's a trail that leads around the river, and there's a very small car park here. It's only, I think, maybe 4 cars can park here. And then there's a path leading here onto the main road. But as you can see, there's a really dense woodland to the left as well, and it actually follows all the way down. I believe these are football pitches or GAA pitches. Now, I know that people walk through these paths as well. There is a path there that you can get to through the estate. However, when we tried to access it from this point, we found it quite difficult to get through there. I'm sure people from Glanmire, if they're watching this, they're like, well, you didn't pick the right path. But again, it's an accessibility, it's a safety issue, but that is another really nice wild site as well. but we just concentrated on John O'Callaghan Park for ease of access, as I said. So you can see here, these are all pictures that were provided by Rebecca Sullivan, who was with me when we went out and did the survey. So you can see here that they have a lovely riparian area. They have wildflower meadow. This was a clear grassland area when I was a kid, and now you see it's grown really high now, and it's very dense. That's me in the center of it, just to give you some context to how big that area is. And what I wanted to do is just highlight some of the species found in this. Oh, I forgot to finish the name of that plant, excuse me. So you just have a great diversity of plants in this area. So you have your trees, you have your elm, you have your bramble, you have your wildflowers, as you can see, and you also have your fungi. And just a few more, you have your bunnlia. These are really, really good for pollinators, particularly butterflies. You have your self-heal, as you can see there, we have lovely bumblebee on it. But you also have Himalayan balsam, and this is an invasive species. It was found along the stretch of the river. It was actually only in a very small area. And when we were looking at it, we realized that there was just so many bumblebees and honeybees and butterflies visiting this plant. And you hear a lot about Himalayan balsam, how it's an invasive species, and it's, no one likes invasive species, but it clearly provided resources for these animals. However, then you have to take into account that if they're going to the balsam instead of going to the bunnlia, or instead of going to the wildflowers, then that's affecting those species being pollinated and basically, continuing their cycle. And we also had a lot of different animals in the area. We actually got talking to a few of the locals in the park, and unfortunately we don't have pictures of it, but one gentleman said that there was birds of prey in the area. We did see one in the distance. Was it a sparrowhawk? If Rebecca was here now, she could tell me. I should have had it written down. But yeah, it was great. It was just really nice talking with the local people. We were talking to a few fishermen that were telling us that there's salmon in the river and that there's trout as well. And here you can see you have a lovely grey heron. We have the spotted longhorn, and we have lovely wagtails. And then you're going into the beautiful damosel. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Your pretty common meadow brown, and then we had a lot of different bumblebees, but I just really like this picture because you can really see the red tail of this bumblebee. So for, I suppose, a medium-sized site, there's a lot going on. Like I actually didn't take any pictures when we were in the woodland, but when you walk around the park, you basically follow the path of the river, and then you can go uphill. It's actually quite steep, and you're in the center of the woodland, and there's a lot of fallen trees making it great habitat, a lot of fungi. I imagine that there potentially is foxes in there and a lot of other mammals that we just didn't see that day. We did also, while talking with people from the area, find out that there are otters in that river. They've been spotted a few times. So it's a really, really great site that I suppose on first sight when you go there, or at me as a kid, you wouldn't really notice it, but it really is a fantastic site, and definitely worth going to if you're in Glanmire area, because it has a park. It also has an outdoor gym area, so it's a great one for families to go to, although it is a small walk, I will say that. So it is quite a small walk, but I'm sure if you do a few laps of it. So that's really everything that I wanted to talk about on the project. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I just say special thanks to Rebecca, who took all these fantastic photos. I had a few photos on my phone, and they were just such bad quality. So I'm just really grateful that she was there with her keen eye and her great photography skills as well. So I'm going to shut